Hello, everyone. Hi, Gumball. Hi, people. I'm just going to wait for a few minutes for a few people to join, and then I'll get started. I've got a few polls that should be showing up for you guys to answer and take part in. Hey, Shin. Yeah, I've got a few polls that you should be able to see. So hopefully, you guys can have look at the polls. I don't know how to check if they're available to you guys or not, but never mind. Yeah. So yeah, hope everyone's keeping well and looking forward to their weekend. I've been meaning to do a live for a while now, but I never seem to get around to it, and something else always comes up. So yay. Hi, Atheist Chico. Yeah, I'm just waiting. I've only just gone on live, so I'm just waiting for a few people to come on. There's been a few things I wanted to make content about, and it's just having the energy and the time amongst other things to get it done. So this is like one way of just blurting out my frustrations. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're here too, Shin. Yeah, so I might just get started now. I'm a bit impatient. But also I haven't been doing lives very much, so my viewerships for my videos and that seem to have gone down a fair bit, as well as everything else. So yeah, I'm gonna just get started. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to just rant about is the fact that there's this really patronizing and annoying thing that people in non people who aren't Caucasian and white, like whether you're from Arabia or Middle East or Africa or Asia, one of the things that people say about LGBT rights and women's rights, and progressive rights that people mainly have in Europe, is that it's a Western thing, and in the rest of the world we shouldn't sort of like be taken over by the Western values, and it's like it really pisses me off, because they're not Western values. These things aren't Western values in any way, shape, or form. Because I've been watching something called Call the Midwives on the BBC iPlayer in the UK. And one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the rights that women have today, a lot of these so-called Western rights, they've only been introduced and given over the last few decades. It's not something that's always been around. So if I hoping people can access the polls I put up. But yeah, one of the things that some of the things I've been looking at. First of all, when were women allowed to open a bank account independently without their husband's permission? Do people know? Because in the UK, it wasn't all that long ago. Because I just took it for granted that women were probably allowed to open their own bank account in their own name without their husband's permission in the 1920s or something like that, around the same time that we got the right to vote in the UK. But it's not. It's in 1975. How ridiculous is that? And then you come then you come to marital rape in um, in the UK, and it wasn't classed as a crime in the legal system in, until a lot later than a lot of people would think. So a lot of people used to, I thought it would be maybe 1950s, maybe a bit earlier, around that sort of part. Do people want to take a guess? Because it isn't that long ago. It was actually, because it's actually within a lot of our lifetimes in 1990 friggin' two. That's when the UK legal system decided that it wasn't a criminal offence. It is a criminal offence for rape to happen within a marriage. How fucking ridiculous is that? The West is great, but these rights and things like that are so recent and they've been so hard fought for. And these same rights during colonial times until very recently, they've been fought for by the rest of the world. You know, in India, there were socialists and atheists fighting for secularism during the Indian independence and before. And you can look back at things like the Santhal Rebellion, which was against not just the British colonizers, but also the Arab, not just the British colonizers, but their indigenous Hindu priests and hierarchy that were discriminating against the lower castes too. So, you know, this idea that these progressive values are Western, it really friggin' pisses me off. The other thing I had one of my videos was saying how one of my videos I had a comment from a Christian saying, you know, just the usual, oh God, I feel sorry for these Muslims, they do not know what they do. Hi, stop the hate, thank you. No, I quite like the sound of my own voice. Thank you, Bongi. Yeah. So anyway, so I've lost my train of thought. Yeah. So somebody was saying, oh, in Christianity, you know, somebody was saying, oh, thank God for Jesus Christ, because you know the Islamic God does not know, and the Islamic, you know, Muslims do not know what they're doing, and so because I follow quite a lot of ex-Christians as well. They do freaking great work. Yeah, they do a really good job. So I'm aware that Christianity has its fair share of nastiness, and so I went to check. I just had to think about it, and somebody just before I saw that comment, I saw a TikTok come up about Deuteronomy in the Bible, Deuteronomy 22 verse 28 to 30. People should look it up. It's quite horrendous. It's basically saying that a man can rape a woman in the countryside, and if he does, the man is entitled to marry her. And that just made me feel sick, and that is not too far from a lot of the things written in the Holy Quran either. So yeah, it beggars belief. And I don't know the exact date when this stopped, but people were hanged for leaving Christianity as well. And under certain, because of certain verses. I'm not an expert on eat any of these religious books because they make me feel sick to the stomach just reading what I have read. So yeah, yeah, you can think it's a lie. I don't care. The everybody can see for themselves by going to Quran.com and all um these other books what people are saying, what the Quran actually says. They can read it for themselves, and they've had a lot of people have had enough. So yeah. Anyway, I haven't been keeping up with the comments. I just want to go back. Yeah, so Bilal said that's from 2014. Do you have anything else to spend your time on? Oh, and you laughed as well. I'm glad you're happy. Um, yeah, it's from 2014, but the shit still applies. It's showing that these religions are designed to divide us and to take the shit out of us and to exploit us and to make money and to enslave people. I don't think we should have royalty, Rubies. I don't think we should. I'm an anarchist and kind of a socialist as well, and I don't think we should have royalty. And I don't like the idea of divine rights of kings or queens or birth privileges that these religions uphold. They make me feel sick to the stomach. And I have a big issue with how our system works. Yeah, probably anarcho-communist. See, the thing is, I spent most of my adulthood as a socialist, and then about a year ago, I'm like starting to see more holes in the organizational structures and some of the ideas of socialism, and I'm like, so I have a lot more criticisms of socialism, but anarchism seems to be more where I'm at. Oh, brilliant, Theo. So I'm not gonna accept this conversation from a request. If I know somebody, I will let them on. Man corrupts religions and the theory behind religions. It really doesn't, dude. It really doesn't. It's the other way round. If people followed these religions and actually went through the text and put them into action, we'd be stuffed. There's a reason why Europe has gone down the secular route, because it couldn't keep on going under the religious rules. They were too oppressive and too suffocating, and people were rising up against it. I don't have an issue with it. Religious people have been indoctrinated either. It's the religions that's the issue, definitely. But yeah, because I've just been watching a bit of the Enlightenment, a video on the Enlightenment on YouTube, and the reason why we have secularism in the UK and the West is because of things like the French Revolution, where people said, fuck this shit, I do not want these blasphemy laws and stuff like that. I want to, I just want to be able to practice whatever I believe in my own time, in my own way. I don't want a priest or somebody telling me what I should or shouldn't do. And how I should or shouldn't pray and stuff like that. And people had enough of the starvation and the hunger while their priests and ministers and stuff like that were seething in gold and dripping in like money from the poor and stuff like that. They just had enough of it. And that's why they revolted. It's not... It's not any other reason that we have these things in the West today. And yeah, I think one of the things that we don't discuss about in like atheist and ex-religious circles, I might be wrong, I could be wrong, but I think one of the things we don't discuss is just how important mass protests, strikes, these sorts of things are to secular movements and atheism, and how it's so connected to sort of like the struggles of trade unions and things like that. And it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because all of these things to me are linked. You know, there's a clear, for me, there's a clear as day distinction, reasoning why in the West we have welfare states, we have universal healthcare, we have free education for everyone. It's not because secularism is all about niceness. It kind of is, but and the Islamic countries don't have these things, and religious countries don't tend to have these things. There's a reason behind it, and that is down to the fact that in a lot of Western European countries, we've rejected a lot of religious BS and the hierarchy that comes with that. And we fought against it. And until very recently, until maybe the last 20, 30 years, being a lefty and being anti-religious was the de facto thing. You know what I mean? It was like, if you look at Ken Loach's The Wind That Shakes the Barley, I think it's called. It's about the Irish Revolution. And there's this scene where the socialists whatnot, one of the socialist guys was up in the church having sort of like pointing out and being outraged and being really clear about the fact that the church had betrayed them, had betrayed the ordinary people of the community that they're supposed to be talking to and there to look after and be the shepherd of. And yet they just sort of like, they were more on the side of the British rulers and the oppressors. There will always be a boogeyman. I don't disagree with that, but I think hold on, I'll just have a glass of water. I don't disagree with that, but I think that's why I quite like the idea, some of the anarchist ideas, because they recognise that one of the things that I agree with a lot of anarchists on is the fact that until we change our attitudes and our thinking and our own mental health and our self-worth, we can't, and our critical thinking, we can't move forward in the world. We can't progress as a society until we say, oh no, hold on, you might be the leader, you might be the mayor, but I'm not going to take everything you say for word. I want proof, and I'm good, and question everything. Until that sort of mentality is in every single one of us, we are kind of doomed. That's why things like during the US during the slavery era, if you watch Roots, there's a few scenes where they show that during slavery, people weren't allowed to, and black slaves weren't allowed to learn to read or write, or be able to read and write. It was a criminal offence, and that is why. Because if we think for ourselves, and if we really do think for ourselves and think critically and demand the best for ourselves, then they don't have a chat. The people who like to oppress us and treat us like crap don't have a chance. If we start by having by knowing our own worth and our own value, then thinking it's a lot harder. And then, if we know our own worth, then we know, hopefully, we can learn our own collective strength and our own collective community that is, that should be there too. and move forward with that. There is no easy and quick answer. And I don't believe humans are of. I think human beings are freaking complicated. I think there's more than one side to human nature. It's really freaking weird. Hold on, I'm just having another sip of water. Because like I've already said, a lot of people might have heard, my background is like being a socialist, a trade unionist, more now a anarchist. But I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, so yeah, I don't agree that human beings have just one nature. I think we're too fucking complicated for just to be classed as all violent or not. I think I'll give you a good example. Yeah, but things like this are still happening. It doesn't matter when it was. It's indicative of the things that are happening. So stop gaslighting. Anyway, so in terms of violence, people being violent, I think that is so bullshitty. Because if you look, I'll give you a really quick example. If you go right, this is a bit far fetched, but bear with me. So in the 1900s, about 1924 or something like that, Britain elected its first Indian MP in the UK in London. And he had massive support from people in one of the boroughs of London. I think it might have been Poplar. He had massive support, and people who came out in protest to support him. And there used to be, that people don't know about this, which is a crying shame, but there used to be massive protests against the treatment of Indian workers in India. There used to be massive support for the freedom fighters in India fighting against the British rule in our British land. And you know, there's huge support, but at the same time, around that sort of time, you also had sort of like race riots. And really, like Mosley, the fascist, and you had people, the Battle of Cable Street, which was against the fascists, around that time as well. So I think human nature is too fucking mind-blowingly complicated to say, no, don't pick up Mosley. He would probably have you, hi Atheist Hour. That's, I don't know who you are, P. You might even be a bot, but most people, if the nasties came in, we would have a huge problem, and they would attack and treat everyone like shit. It would be, if you're working class, if you're gay, if you're a woman, if you're disabled, if you've got the wrong coloured hair, you know what I mean? It would be horrible for everyone and nasty for everyone. So, when people support like these nasty people, I'm like, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because these guys are going to come after you too. I hope I'm not. I hope I'm doing okay and people can keep up with me and stuff, and I'm not ranting too much. Thanks for the likes, guys. So yeah. But one of the other things I wanted to just yeah, if you don't like my waffling, just go, dude. 0000. Just go if you don't like it. Bye. Thank you, Gumball. Thank you, Atheist Hour. So yeah, one of the things that has been really ticking me off as well, and I don't think I've stressed this enough, and I really want to stress this, is so in like Europe only had to deal with one lot of colonialism to fight back against. So they only had to deal with the Roman Catholic Church and the church to fight back against. And that was it, which was bad enough in itself. And, people before us who gave us these rights by fighting for them struggled and went through a load of shit and sacrificed a lot, not knowing whether or not their hard work was going to pay off. But in the Middle East and the colonial world, people had to fight not only the white European colonizers, but also their own indigenous sort of like class shits as well, ruling class shits as well. Sorry, I've got really bad language, but yeah. So, for example, in India, they had their own kings and queens who sold them out to the British Raj, who discriminated against them, and who used things, who devised things like the caste-based system to enslave people and what have you, and create division. And then, so you had in India, you had the Hindu sort of like ruling elites and class system, which was weighed so heavily on them. But then on top of that, you also had the Islamic reign there as well. Exactly, P. The caste system is ancient, and a lot of these religions are based on these ancient traditions and ancient religions. That they're just kind of a copycat and cut and paste job of ancient religions. Anyway, so it go back to India. So you have you have the Hindu, the Christian, sort of like ruling extreme sort of like bullshit of class, like discrimination and stuff like that, and oppressing people and dividing people. And then you have the Islamic one as well. So 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 much more battles have had to be fought for by people in the Middle East, in South Asia and stuff like that. And that is why it is further back. And it's had more sort of like things, taking things out of there, and sort of like beating the shit out of it. It's had more trauma to deal with. And that's why they're behind, not because Asian or African or Middle Eastern people are any less progressive. It's because they've had a lot more shit to fight against. Um, and these say, these during the colonial era. Sorry, I need to take a drink again. Yeah, so during the colonial era, a lot of these anti-colonial movements in these sort of like former colonies, they were a lot of them weren't just anti-white colonialism, European colonialism. They despised their own ruling elite as well, partly because they let them down, partly because they treated them like crap, and partly because they knew that they deserved better. And so a lot of the gains that we have in the West today are partly thanks to other people across the world fighting as well, because it was very much a global movement, which we're not seeing quite as much today, because like if you look at what's happening in Iran and the Middle East during the Arab Spring, unfortunately there wasn't a joining together of different so like 10 years ago, yeah, true, but the effects of it still go on, and are still felt. Things don't just happen and then cease to be. They have a rippling effect. But anyway, I'm losing my train of thought. I've completely lost my train of thought. Does anyone want to come up and Um, no, I didn't say meaning left alone. These countries do poorly. Not at all. Not at all. Um, in actual fact, there are some African states and certain places that have done really well, despite um, have done really well because they've been left alone. It's just really sad and frustrating that places like America don't leave countries alone to do what. Lara Sputin, tell me a bit more about yourself, and I will. Tell me a bit more about what you want to say or whatever, because I don't. I'm so used to getting really nasty people coming up. So you just tell me a bit about yourself, so I know you're not a jerk. Um, I completely lost my train of thought again. What was I saying? Hmm. I'm just going to go through the comments and see. Oh yes, so that's fine. Counter away. It's not like I'm having a debate. I'm just sort of like venting because I know there's things that need to be discussed and I need to get off my chest. So yeah, that's fine. People are free to go and look things up or find things out for themselves. Um, yeah, I'm gonna just finish what point I was trying to make, and then I'll bring up Atheist Hour in a minute, if that's okay. Um, so yeah. Anyway, I yeah. So with Arab countries, if they left them alone, they would invade, and you would be wearing a hijab. No, because a lot of Arab countries and Middle Eastern countries, you'll be surprised about how much they don't want Islamic rule. Iran is a great example, but the Arab Spring was a great example. Tunisia, Sudan, quite a few countries are trying to or have got rid of the Islamic element in Islamic Sharia and things like that. So no, if left to their own devices, but that's the other thing. Think like capitalism and the US are so hotly embedded with the Saudis and the elites in the Middle East, and they benefit from that because they have cheap labor they can exploit under the kafala system and slave-like systems that exist in the UAE and places like that. Um, so yeah. Anyway, I'm going to bring on Atheist Dawa. Um, Hi.
Hi Rose, happy Friday.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I'm been a busy day. I've had a driving lesson and been shopping, and then I thought I'd be crazy and come on here. But yeah, how are you?
Yeah, not
Hello.
too bad. Just been a long week and looking forward to it. Yeah, hello there, Rose. Can you hear me?
I can hear you good, thank you.
Hello.
You still there?
2 minutes, Rose. Let me move into another room where it's quieter. I'll call you back.
Oh, okay. No worries, no worries.
Yeah, let me
But
call you back in 2-3 minutes, Rose. My reception's quite weak.
okay, no worries. I'll speak to you in a bit. Bye. Okay. All right. Is there anything people would like me to talk about? I don't know you, Saf, so I'm not going to accept your guest request. Um, yeah, I should probably do what a lot of TikTokers who do live streams do and take guest requests of people, like anyone from the audience. But yeah, I just don't have the energy today. Nope. So yeah, for people who are saying that this is from 2014, it who cares? It's still things like this are still going on. It's do you think because it's from 2014, this sort of shit has stopped going on? Do you think the chummy relationship between our royal families and our corporations in the West have stopped being so chummy with the nasty rulers and dictators of the Middle East and Asia and places like that? I don't think it does. You know what I mean? It still continues. There's been nothing to stop it. And in the UK, it's it's largely illegal to sell arms to Saudi Arabia and countries like that. But you'll still find our glorious Tory MP twat features like Liz Truss doing illegal arms deals. So no, both ways, Sid. It's both ways. They both bootlick each other. Um, no, Saf, I'm not going to take your friend request. But yeah, no, it's both ways. I don't know if people have heard about something called the kafala system. I've been meaning to do like a video on it or something like that, but I I haven't got round to it. But it's like slavery light, and it's practiced in South Asia as well, so places like Pakistan and Bangladesh and places like that. And thank you, Stop the Hate. If you want to like mention more of it, because I've not like looked into it enough. So if you can add to it, that'd be great. Yeah, exactly. There's still slavery in Yemen as well. Exactly. And um, a lot of black Nigerian women and Kenyan women and stuff like that are trafficked into the Middle East and kept as slaves. Um, Religion has everything to do with politics. They're the same thing. Religion was designed by politicians to do politics. Check it out. I mean, there's a reason why religion covers slavery and a lot of economic things and condones wife beating and restricts the rights of women. It's all political, dude. And yeah, you have verses in the Quran that say anybody who tries to make a slave equal to any slave owner who tries to share their wealth and make themselves equal with their slaves is a sinner and it's haram. These are political, economic things. So, yeah, it's like to say they're not is ridiculous. And not to realize that there's a there's a correlation between like secular countries where people have much ordinary working people and working class communities have more rights and more access to stuff, access to healthcare, free healthcare and stuff like that, whereas Islamic countries and heavily Christian countries don't have that. That have those things. There's a reason. You know what I mean? These religious books don't allow for that. But going back to the kafala system and slavery, sorry, I think somebody's trying to peak Woken. I'm really sorry. If I don't know you, I'm not going to bring you up. Um, Unless one of my moderators knows you or one of my TikTok friends on here knows you and recommends that I let you on. Yeah. All right. Let me know more about what you want to talk about and what you're about. But anyway, what was I saying? I've completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, Pete Woken. Once I've got to know you, I might have you on. Right. At least with those dictators, we don't have a religion in our Western civilization. What? We shouldn't have. Oh, yeah, that's the one thing that does bugbear me, actually. No, religion is submission to God. That is different from control. Really? Oh my God, seriously? Uh, Sorry, some of these comments, yeah. Yeah, okay. Submission to God is submitting to what he tells you to do in the scriptures. I put air quotes that you can't see, unfortunately. And part, um, yeah, so submission to God is submitting to the fact that slavery should exist, and that people should be their slaves, but not so hard it kills them within 3 days. That's from the Bible. I think it's Deuteronomy somewhere. Um, yeah, so no. The new Prime is shit. I don't have a clue. I don't watch Prime that much. Okay, gonna get rid of you again. Right. Gonna mute you for at least 5 minutes. Right. Would you like a cup of tea? Yes, please. Yeah, anyway, going back to what I was talking about. So yeah, I keep losing my why is the YPG hashtag satirical? I didn't say it was. Um oh,
Hi, Rose.
hi.
Can you hear
Oh,
me
that's
better now?
much. I can indeed. Thank you for coming on.
No worries. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. All the better for hearing your voice,
Oh, thank you.
and having you on. Um, so yeah, what did you want to talk about?
Just continuing on from, I'd like to listen to what the topic of the live is. Is it about uh, Western support for the Middle East, or is it just generally about the Middle East?
Well, for me, I wanted to talk about how similar the ruling elites are and how much there is like a relationship between the rulers in the West and corporations in the West and the rulers and the corporations in the Middle East. And one of the things that I started off by saying is it's not that long ago that a lot of the rights we have in the UK were given to us. I mean, for example, marital rape wasn't illegal until 1992. And men weren't allowed, I'm sorry, women weren't allowed to open their own bank account without their husband's permission until 1975. And one of the things that has been really ticking me off is when people say, "Oh, don't follow Western values," and all this feminism stuff is bullshit Western ideology, and I'm like, "Nah, that's not true." And thinking in the East, we have yeah, so in the Middle East and Asia and stuff like that, we've had people having the same fights against religion and stuff like that. Sorry, I'm for some reason I'm looking at the comments and it's making me lose my train of thought. But yeah, so that was part of it, but also the fact that they, whether it's Christianity or Islam, um, they kind of do like beat the shit out of humanity, and they completely railroad our rights and our like ability to live with dignity and humanely. Um, yeah, so yeah, that was most of it. But one of the other things I did go into is the fact that the one of the key reasons why the West have progressed in terms of human rights and things like that is because mainly the in Western Europe and in Europe, we've only had to fight Christian rule and the Roman Catholic Church. Whereas in places like, for example, India, they've had to fight their own Hindu casteist sort of like ruling elites who sort of like institutionally and in all sorts of ways have abused and sort of abused the lower castes and put in infrastructure to completely sort of like discriminate against lower classes and things like that. So they've had that oppression in India. Then they've had the Islamic colonizers as well as the British colonizers. And so, in a lot of other places, they've had not just one layer of colonialism to fight, but they've had two or three more of colonialisms to fight and oppressions to fight. So, that is one of the main reasons why the West is so far forward. But it's only recently that these progressive things have come into being. And it's only through sort of like mass sort of like protest movements like we saw in 1968 and the French Revolution before that and things like the USSR. I have criticisms of socialism in USSR, but I do recognise it is sort of like responsible for a lot of the rights that we have today and things like the welfare state and the NHS. You have to understand many countries are mixing culture and Islam, and this causes misinformation. Okay.
Well, I mean, if we go back, I mean, there's obviously a lot there. I think talking specifically about the Middle East, and Saudi Arabia, if you want to be even more precise, Saudi Arabia wouldn't survive a day if America pulled its support from Saudi Arabia. This is a country which is still executing people for witchcraft in the 21st century.
So and publicly as well, on the public roads. It's not like it's bad enough that they're executing people publicly, but the fact that it's done out in the open on public roads, it's just seen as a normal thing. It's insane. But sorry, carry on, Atheist Hour.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's and you famously have Chop Chop Square as well, where people on Friday after prayer are taken to the middle of a public square and executed for a variety of crimes. So this is the society we're talking about. Is it fit for the 21st century? Probably not. No. Definitely not. It's a society which I think it's at a crossroads because MBS, the current de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, is trying to bring in reforms, and you may have seen the videos and the pictures of the Halloween party and all sorts of things.
They made me really happy. Did you get as much of a kick out of reading the butthurt comments under the Saudi Halloween videos?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a yearning to leave that kind of very strict and pernicious interpretation of Islam by the man and the woman on the street. But certainly going back to your comments about the ruling class are held in place by the religious authorities in that country. Are they losing a stranglehold on society? Maybe. It's difficult to say sometimes. It's always difficult to quantify these things. But are they aligned with Western liberal ideals? Definitely not. I definitely don't see.
I mean, one of the reasons why I put this image up of Prince Charles, or should I say King Charles, was to and stating how like recently a lot of these Christian sort of like barbaric laws have been repealed in favor of more secular laws is because as far as I can see, if it was up to like King Charles and the Christian church in the UK and definitely in America, if I strongly do feel that they would love to have the power that Islam has in the Middle East, and it still gives the regimes in the Middle East. I don't know if you agree with that or not. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that there is certainly a jealousy from the church that Islam has a stranglehold over societies in the Middle East, where someone mentioned in the comment section that it's a mix of culture and religion, and we shouldn't do that. Given the chance, these people would want a Sharia state, the Islamists anyway,
yeah,
where they would have Sharia implemented at a state level. Thankfully, that isn't the case in most, if not any, Arab countries. Sharia or Islam is it's a weird mix in their societies because they're forced by the citizens to adhere to certain elements of Islam, but certain parts of their constitution and their laws isn't Islamic, it's secular. So it is the Middle East going through some form of reformation, a very small reformation. But so
yeah,
I don't. I think one of the questions I get asked, and I've been thinking about for a while, is will the Middle East go through the same reformation, the same enlightenment that Europe went through 300 years ago, which allowed it to pull itself out of the Dark Ages and make
yeah,
all the progress that it did, where society was run on logic and rationale rather than superstition and religion. I
yeah,
just can't see it happening. I think the reason is um, Muslims see the Quran as being infallible and the immutable word of God,
yeah,
and Muhammad is the best of creations, and therefore you shouldn't change anything that he said or the Quran
yeah,
implies. So I don't think such a reformation will take place in the Middle East. I think
sure,
it'll always be an amalgamation of some secular laws with some Islamic laws. So
yeah,
I can never see the day where it would be fine to draw a picture of Muhammad in the Middle East and people would have a disagreement, but it would be an intellectual disagreement. I think if that ever
yeah.
happened,
It
you would
is.
always see the
It's just
society bring themselves down.
yeah. No, I agree with that. I think the other thing that I think we underestimate is how much, especially in the UK and maybe so in places like Denmark and stuff like that, the church still has sort of like power, and it still tries to implement laws and things like that, because a lot of the Church of England does have lords in the House of Lords, and one of the things that has been pushed and supported by the Church of England has been the Sharia courts in the UK. And one of the reasons why is because they want this return to um, religious sort of like rule and things like that. And supporting things like the Sharia courts is a way to do that, because they detest secularism and definitely detest people like me who are openly gay and proud of it and stuff like that, and like active in terms of my atheism. I don't know if I'm assuming you've heard of Miriam Namazi.
Yes.
Yeah. You may have also heard of a organization that she's a part of called One Law for All. Basically, one of the reasons why it was set up was um, to call for the banning of the Sharia courts in the UK. And one of the ladies who supports and works with her is Geeta Sehgal, and she has talked about how the there was the government have just allowed these Sharia courts to happen in the UK without any sort of like um what's it called, human rights audits and
Regulations.
things. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That they haven't been checking them for abuse and things like that. And a lot of these Sharia courts have been run by quite dubious Islamists, and it's been it's been really vile, and one of the things that really startled me was when Geeta Sehgal was saying how once they finally managed to push the government into having some sort of a sort of like a commission on the Sharia courts, that they didn't do it very well. And one of the people, the main person that they had overseeing this commission about the Sharia courts and the human rights violations and things like that, was actually a Christian, I can't say the word, but a Christian sort of like figurehead who was like vehemently sort of like anti-abortion, anti-LGBT, and very sort of like right-wing Christian fundy. And this guy was the one that was chairing this commission, and obviously he was going to like say, oh yeah, it's all fine, because it's in line with a lot of what he wants to see. So yeah, and yeah,
Well, there's a massive imbalance when you look at certain Sharia code and laws, certainly imbalanced in favor of the man. So, for example, a man can divorce his wife quite quickly, whereas
yeah,
there's a documentary. I don't know if you watched it. It was on about 3 or 4 years ago on ITV. Presuming you're from the UK,
yeah, I am, yeah,
and it was filming the Sharia courts in the UK. And some of the
yeah,
struggles that the women had to go through to divorce their husbands, they had to really jump through the hoops and prove beyond doubt and really kind of hammer it home into the imams that they didn't want to be with their husbands. Whereas for the husband, it was quite straightforward to divorce their wife. And that's the
yeah,
imbalance in Islam. You can see the hallmarks that this was invented in the 7th century deserts, where men, of course, had a lot more power than the women. And all of these laws that you
yeah.
now see and hear about in Islam are geared towards and certainly in favor of men more so than they are women. So, yeah, I don't see any need for there to be a Sharia court in the UK. There should be one
No,
law for all.
exactly. I don't think we should have religious or Sharia courts of any kind anywhere in the world, but definitely not in the UK.
The same goes
Um,
for the
yeah,
Jewish, because this, if you ever bring this up, you'll hear a great deal of whataboutism from Muslims.
yeah,
They'll say, "Well, what about the Beth Din, which is the religious Jewish courts?" Same
yeah,
applies to that. In case any Muslims listening and saying that we're picking favor here,
mm,
one law for all: Muslims, Jews, Hindus, whomever it may be, in front of the
exactly,
court, everyone's judged the same. So I thought I'd
exactly.
preempt that before the Muslims start saying, "Hey, what about this and what about that?" Which is their favorite rebuttal to
Yeah,
everything we say.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's the other thing. One of the things I find really infuriating is when people talk about Sharia law and how Islam gave women rights. And then you look at Muhammad's wives, and he had 12 wives altogether, I believe. So he went from Khadija, who was, this was pre Islam, because Muhammad didn't come along and establish Islam straight away. So this was pre-Islam, when Muhammad was married to Khadija, and she was, I think, I know she was older than him. I'm not quite sure how much older. She was his boss. She owned her own business. She ran her own business. She owned her own home. She traveled. She did everything she needed to do those things without any qualms. She was able to inherit from her father and everything else. And so you went from that to what you have when you see like his later wives, like Khadija, and you see even like the sex slaves that he had, and you're like, Islam didn't give them rights. Women, in a lot of circumstances, women had more rights before Islam in Arabia. Islam actually took them away. just by looking at the case of his wives and how the status of women changed throughout his marital sort of like fuckwittery, so to speak. It's just unbelievable that people try that on. I mean, he sort of like, according to Sharia and according to, because of what Muhammad wanted, women are only allowed to inherit half of what their brothers can inherit. We can't have the triple talaq, which is saying talaq, talaq, talaq 3 times, and then a man's divorced from his wife. And there's other things as well that doesn't come to mind. But yeah, a woman has to like make sure she gets permission of her husband before she leaves the house and things like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. A woman shouldn't travel.
These are all the signs and hallmarks that this was invented in the desert by Muhammad in the 7th century, and it was made for the 7th century desert. This is where Muslims now in the 21st century in the West have a real problem of trying to bring these values into the 21st century in the West. Because at the core of this is this belief, this idea that this message is for all times and all places. So are you telling me now these are applicable in the 21st century in the UK or in France, where the punishment for being homosexual is being thrown off the highest point within that vicinity? Is that how you're going to run society? And I mean, in terms of treatment of women, there's these myths that are often promulgated, spread, that before Islam, the world was this dark place where nothing happened and everyone was just a savage, which is not true.
Yeah. One of them is
that girls were being buried alive by their families for being girls. Well, where did everyone come from then? If every girl was being buried alive, where did the men come from? How did society, progress and continue? Did they fall out of the sky? So they like to give this idea, paint this bleak picture of the past, and then Muhammad came along, the best of creations, and everything was right. None of this adds up.
No, exactly. And the thing is, a lot of the like scientific things that Muhammad tried to lay claim to were things that he had borrowed and stolen from ancient times. I'm not great at remembering a lot of the details.
Well, the medicine is a great example. So the Greeks, for example, had the concept of the 4 humours of the body. Primitive science, they believe that the human body was made up of what's referred to as the 4 humours. Black bile, yellow bile, blood, and I think it was pus. Obviously, we know that the human body is far more complex than 4 humours, but prophetic medicine, Muhammad's medicine, was based around the concept of 4 humours. So I often say the best way of seeing if someone's cheated or copied is to see the mistakes and not the accuracies. If 2 sources have exactly the same mistakes, word for word, chances are they've been copied. Ancient Greek science and medicine came thousands of years before Muhammad did. And the fact that Muhammad's talking about the 4 humours of the human body, identical to the Greeks, that gives you an indication that this was clearly copy and pasted from Greek medicine 1,000 years ago. Then they'll talk about Muhammad being illiterate and how could he have read. That's not beyond the scope of imagination that he could have asked someone to write for him. Scribes have existed for thousands of years. So this idea he's illiterate isn't really much of an argument. If he was illiterate, he could have got someone to write this for him. And if he was literate, then he would have written it himself.
Exactly. Sorry, I've got somebody knocking at the door, which is really frustrating. Are you okay to carry on? I'm going to just check who it is.
Sorry, Ibrahim, I'm sorry, jump on the call.
Ooh. Sorry. You just bear with me. I'm going to just... sorry, hon.
How he knew speed of light? What Muhammad knew the speed of light was 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second.
Samsung C charger. Come on in. Sorry.
Mustaf.
Just on a.
That, but it's a bigger one. A bigger.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
Right, where is it
Can
that
I
3 times
hold
10
on?
to the 8
Sorry,
meters per
I'm
second is
listening to a
mentioned
call
in the
as well.
Hadith or the
I'm
Quran?
in. Hold on a second. There you go. Borrow that for as long as you need.
Thank you.
Okie
That'll do
dokie.
that.
Right.
All right.
All right. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I can't. Yeah, I'm a bit of a mess. All right. You look after yourself then.
Thank you, and I'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit. Bye.
Bye.
Sorry about that. I'm back now.
Yeah, no worries. I've got to jump off in a few minutes. My kids have just come home. But yeah, someone's mentioning that Muhammad knew the speed of light in the 7th century.
Yeah.
Risible, as they would say,
Yeah.
laughable.
Yeah. Maybe
Muhammad
he
also knew
used.
general relativity.
Yep. He probably used that when he was flying to heaven on his winged horse. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah,
this is again laughable because we said, where's the proof that he flew to the 7th heaven on the winged animal or that he split the moon? It's a miracle. We don't need to provide any proof. Okay, fine. Here's evolution. We've got 150 years worth of evidence here. Numerous departments around the world, Harvard, Oxford. There's the concept of evolutionary medicine as well, which we all use on a daily basis without even knowing. No, nonsense. It's a
exactly.
theory. I haven't seen it. You're relying on idiots. But flying to the 7th heaven on a winged animal, yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm going to believe that. I mean, this is the nonsense these guys
Oh,
preach to
and there's
people.
other. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if people want to check out Abdullah Gondal and Abdullah Samir on YouTube, they actually go into and dissect the fact that the beloved prophet was possibly psychotic and very mentally damaged and deluded, and that's why he was in caves for 40
Definitely
days
deluded. I
and
think,
things.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely deluded. The thing is, if I have to be fair about Muhammad, he was just a man of his time. That's all he was.
Mm.
He was a warlord. He was a
Yeah.
man whose morals were shaped by the time that and the place that he lived in, and that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
was he good or bad person for that? If we involve the President fallacy, if you judge him by today's standards, obviously a bad person. By the standards
Mm.
of the day, he was just a bog standard man. But what he wasn't, and it is an exemplar for all of humanity for all times, because
Exactly.
then you would be trying to have sex slaves today, or you would be
Mm.
having numerous wives, or you would be massacring people. And they say that, oh no, this is where the flip flopping comes into play. They say he's the
Yeah.
best of humanity and his lessons of all times in all places. What, marrying a 6-year-old
Mm.
girl? No, not that one. Why is that no
Exactly.
longer applicable from Muhammad's lessons in the 21st century? Although I say that, if you see what's going on in Yemen, there's an endemic of young girls being married off to older men, 8, 9-year-old girls being married
Exactly.
off to 30, 40-year-old men. And the
Exactly.
ulama there say there's no such thing as the age of consent in Islam. And if it was good enough for Muhammad, it's good enough for our girls. That's the rationale
Yeah,
that they
there's
use.
exactly. There's a someone saying it's not in the Quran. There's a chapter and verse. Is it
Neither is,
65?
sorry to interrupt, Rose.
Oh, sorry.
You say it's, he says it's not in the Quran. Where is how you pray in the Quran? It's not there. You have to use the hadith. Yeah, these guys will pick and choose whatever argument they want for whichever
Yeah.
purposes that they want. It's not
But
in the
there is
Quran, so we don't
actually,
have to believe it.
yeah, there is a chapter and verse in the Quran that says that you can marry a prepubescent child. I think it's something like chapter 65, verse 4 or something like that. It is there.
Well, there's Muhammad Hijab, who I don't know if you're familiar with Muhammad Hijab.
Yeah,
He's
oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's at Speaker's Corner saying, and he's arguing with the Quranists who don't believe in the Hadith, and he says that if you were just to follow the Quran without the Hadith, the Quran would give
Mm,
you permission to actually marry a prepubescent child, the verse that you were mentioning. So you have to use the Hadith. Now that opens up another can of worms, because if you're using the Hadith, I'm presuming you're going to use all the Hadith, including the one where he marries a 6-year-old girl. And someone mentioned in the comments, the same guy who's spamming away, that it's not authentic Hadith. I've seen all of these excuses. It's not in the Quran. That Hadith is not Sahih. That's for that time and place and not for now. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, I've heard all of these excuses. They're not going to work any longer. And that's why a lot more people than you think are leaving Islam every day.
Oh, exactly. I don't know if you've seen, because like in the light of the Swedish burning of the Holy Karen, one of the things that I looked back at was a video that Harry Sultan did a few years ago, where he showed footage of the Holy Karen being flushed down the sewers and ripped apart in Iran and Saudi Arabia. You know, and you could see the pictures, and there were literally hundreds of stuff. And these were in Saudi Arabia and Iran. And, you know, it's not just Westerners who detest this vile book. It's even in the Middle East, you have people who are rejecting it ad nauseum, you know. I'm just having a look because it's bugging me a little bit, people saying it's not in the Quran and that. So, yeah. So I'm just having a look.
Imagine crying over a marriage that happened 1400 years ago. Well, whoever this commentator is, you're the one, and I'm presuming you're Muslim, go around saying this lesson, this book, these hadith, this man Muhammad, they are for all times and all places. So you're the one who's saying this, presuming you're a Muslim.
Yeah, like I was saying. Sorry, carry on.
Your co-religionists are the ones who stand on street corners giving out flyers like idiots in the rain, saying, hey, come to the truth, this is the eternal truth. So we're not the ones who continuously bring this up. You guys bring this up, that this is a message for all of humanity, fixed. This is where you draw your objective morality from. So why are you throwing the blame on us for talking about it? You guys promulgate this and then blame us for trying to scrutinize it. You can't have it both ways.
Exactly. But also, like, Muslims want sort of like Sharia and Islamic rules and stuff like that and live by it, apparently. I don't think they do, because we'd be in a lot of trouble if they really did. But yeah, so I found it. So it's Quran chapter 65 verse 4, the child marriage claim. So it says here, those who no longer expect menstruation among your women, if you doubt, then their waiting period is 3 months, and also for those who have not menstruated. So yeah, so you can marry those who have not menstruated, which is prepubescent, or wait for 3 months to make sure that that lady isn't carrying someone else's child. You know what I mean? So it's there in black and white. So yeah, yeah, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, we are going to be talking about what happened 1400 years ago, because you guys are constantly wanting to implement those rules and claiming that they are the best way to see things and what have you. Hi, Saint. I'm seeing that Saint Aisha. Yeah, I'm having problems. I'm so disorganized. But yeah, I was going to actually show it on my screen. Let's see if I can find it on. I'm getting all these guest requests now, which of people I don't necessarily know. Yeah, I will have to actually go in a bit, because it's the fastest breeding religion, not the fastest growing. If anything, it's probably the fastest shrinking religion, with people who are leaving it despite the apostasy laws that say people should be unallied for leaving. And that's saying something, but laugh all you like. Yeah, so anyway, I'm gonna have to go in a bit, because my partner, she's going to be coming home from work in a bit. Yeah, anyhow, so yeah, it's been a really good ranting session. It's been good just to let off a bit of steam. And I don't care. King Solomon isn't somebody that billions of people, well, millions of people across the world worship and like burn people alive because he's being disrespected. People don't have like Solomon law that they want to spread everywhere or they insist on having in their country. So why would I care? Um, Yeah, I've talked about it when I was earlier on in the live that Christianity is just as vile. The only difference is that Christianity has lost its power because of people fighting back against it. Um, so yeah. Anyway, the person with the Bengali and British flag. Thank you for coming on. One of the things that I really want to push and do is actually start creating Sylheti Bangla speaking content. Because so far I've not been able to I haven't been able to find any ex-Muslim or atheist content in the Sylheti spoken language. There's been plenty in the Bengali language, which is very different to Sylheti, and is not necessarily understood by Sylhetis. So yeah, one of the things I want to do. I know it's the Bangladesh flag, thank you. And yeah, one of the things that India has Bengalis too, lol. Yes, of course it does. Who is saying that it doesn't? Actually, no. Bangladesh is a secular country, and I'm damn proud of it. Yes, there are a lot of Muslims, but it's a secular country. And in Bangladesh, we are quite proud of the fact that we have, unlike Pakistan, we have processions of like Hindu festivals or Buddhist festivals and things like that in public where people, their community, religious community, is freely able to have a procession, protected and able to celebrate and have other Muslims, like the whole community, get involved. And at the end of things like the Durga Puja, the government of the country addresses the what's called the crowd. No, thankfully, Bangladesh does not have Sharia law, but it doesn't. But because we have Islamists in Bangladesh, it's a hellhole for a lot of people. It's better than Pakistan, but it's still really Islam's made it hell. You look at how it wasn't so bad when I was growing up, but over the last decade, it's become horrendous for a lot of Hindu minorities that have had their temples burned in Bangladesh and stuff like that, and what have you. But also atheist bloggers have been stabbed in broad daylight. And one of them, Avijit Roy, I believe he was visiting Sylhet, and when he American visiting Sylhet, and unfortunately he wasn't alive. But that is in line with the apostasy ruling of Islam that says that if somebody leaves their religion, unalive them. And yeah, it's just heartbreaking because how Islam came to our shores in Bangladesh is just freaking heartbreaking. I know it's not the same, but if people check out something called the Hindu Kush Mountains and check out the meaning behind what that says, if people check out what the meaning behind that and why it was called the Hindu Kush Mountains, it was called the Hindu Kush Mountains because it was named after the massacre of Hindus by the Islamists who invaded. And that is sickening. And that's the sort of shit that that's how Islam spread. And it's just horrendous. And then like there's a reason why Bangladesh has quite a lot of ex-Muslims and atheists as well, even though they're having to be underground a lot more because of these Islamist fanatics who go around unaliving them and stuff like that. A lot of that is to do with sort of like this barbaric sort of like nature of the religion. And and even though we've separated from Pakistan because one of the reasons why Pakistan and Bangladesh were like Pakistan separated from East Pakistan was because Bengalis had enough of the Islamists who were saying that our Bengal language and traditions and things like that weren't Islamic and didn't have Islamic roots and were barbaric and were rooted in idol worship and things like that. Exactly. One of the things that they hated about Bangladesh and Bengali as a language was that it didn't have Arabic roots; it had Hindu roots. And in East Pakistan, Bangladesh now, a lot of our cities, for example, like Dhaka, is actually named after a Hindu goddess, Dhakeshwari. So we've never sort of like we've still kept some of our Hindu roots, and our Hindu population minority in Bangladesh, we've not suppressed them and we've tried to stay as secular as possible. It wasn't just about the language, it was about secularism too. So if you go and look at Sheikh Rajibur Rahman's speech, freedom speech, and look at what he stood for, he actually argued for secularism. One of the things that he said was Bangladesh is for Muslims, it's for Hindus, it's for Christians, it's for Buddhists, it's for everybody. Everybody from Bangladesh is Bengali, regardless of their religion. That was the point of Bangladesh. It wasn't just the language, it was secularism too. Exactly. But yeah, so Thinky, my Sylheti language speaking skills are really bad. So I haven't really made any content. No. Bangladesh is secular. And it was set up to be secular and to distinguish itself from Pakistan, which, if you look at Pakistan and what Islam is doing in Pakistan, it's a big relief that we're a secular country, even though we still have similar problems to Pakistan. Because just about a week ago, a man was burnt alive in public, stripped naked and burnt alive in public, for blaspheming apparently, and they sort of like took him from a police station. And it's around a year after the Priyanka Kumar burning of the Sri Lankan man who left. Sri Lankan factory manager who was burnt alive by around 200 people. So around a year after that, it's horrendous. And there's the news that Switzerland have asked Pakistan to repeal their blasphemy laws, but that alone won't be enough. The Pakistani government have to denounce the clerics for a start, and the Islamists. Exactly, Islam doesn't accept other religions. It says to break idols and kill infidels and things like that. I'm gonna have to go now. I've been meaning to go for a while, but yeah, somebody's talk about energy price crisis. If I had the time, I would do it. But all I can say is in the UK and anywhere else in the world, get involved in things like your trade unions and your community neighborhood activist groups and things like that, and find out how you can make change in your country. And yeah, don't put up with shit. In the UK, we have quite a lot of national strikes this winter. So the NHS workers are on strike and things like, and the Amazon workers are on strike. Rail workers and the Royal Mail are on strike as well. So please, if people have money or time or energy, please go and support these guys. And obviously, please, please, please support the people who are fighting in Iran as well. Because, these things, fighting against poverty and oppression, is something that is global. And, we've got to keep this going. So, yeah, and it's all connected. It's all connected. Anyhow, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to go because my girlfriend's going to be back from work in a bit, and I want to do a few things before she gets back. But yeah, free Afghan women and free Iran, exactly. And yeah, if it weren't for the USA getting involved in Afghanistan and Iran and supporting the Mujahideen and the Islamists against the Soviets and the trade unions and socialists back in the 70s and 80s, we wouldn't have the same shit going on there. It'd be a very different Middle East and possibly very much more secular. But yeah, by the way, I do have criticisms of like the Soviet Union and stuff like that. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better than this. People should actually check it out. There's the BBC have these two cooks that they do a documentary cookery show called The Hairy Bikers, and they did a visit to a culinary tour of Russia. And one of the things that they talked about in that show on the BBC was they were interviewing some of the Russian people while they were on their tour. And some of the people, one of the guys that was interviewed was saying that they had two homes. They were factory worker and they had two homes. They had a country home, which was for holidays and weekends and things like that, which was kind of a cottage. You could actually, the family was interviewed at that cottage. And then you had the home near the factory. And this was during the Soviet era. And you're like, wow, in the UK and places like Poplar and that, you had slums. And whereas there, they had two homes. And then another person they interviewed was saying that they had free education, free healthcare, energy bills were, doable, and all those other things. So, yeah, I could probably go on about it all day. There were issues with the Soviet Union, but there were also a lot of good to come out of it. And one of the reasons why in places like the UK and other parts of the Europe you have things like free healthcare is because of the Soviet Union and the sort of things it implemented, like because the Soviet Union were the first country in the world to have the free healthcare for everybody in their country. And it was about collectively organizing the resources of a country so nobody went without and nobody, to avoid homelessness and things like that and avoid this kind of bullshit sort of like psychotic hoarding of wealth. But anyway, I'm going to go now, but I'd like to thank everybody who's interacted and supported, especially the moderators and people who follow me and are friends with me on TikTok. I really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for your support and always being there, because this isn't an easy thing to do. And being on TikTok and sort of like standing for human rights against religious fanatics and right-wing zealots and things like that. So thank you so very much, guys, and keep doing the excellent work you guys are doing. And with that, I will say bye for now and just be excellent to each other. I'm sorry, Atheist Hour, I'm going to actually be going now because I've got to sort things out before my partner comes home from work. But yeah, but please don't stop fighting for what is right. Take care, guys. Bye for now.